While the Metropolitan Club beats the drums of war, the American public watches Edison newsreels of Spanish atrocities in Cuba. What naive U.S. movie patrons don't realize is that many scenes, like this Spanish execution of Cuban rebels, are reenactments shot on a set behind Edison's New Jersey headquarters. The films, coupled with sensationalistic yellow journalism, fan public outrage against Spain. In this newsreel, eager reporters race to file another anti-Spanish story.
The Spanish-American War was the first war that was promoted, driven by the media. Mainly it was a sort of a war between Joseph Pulitzer in his New York World newspaper and William Randolph Hearst in his New York Morning newspaper. The whole thing started actually before the war started in 1898. They sent reporters down to Cuba to report on the Spanish atrocities, some factual, some not so factual. Richard Harding Davis was a very famous war correspondent, had been in many wars before, and was sent down by William Randolph Hearst to report on the war. Stephen Crane was famous before the war in his fiction novel, Red Badge of Courage. Stephen Crane probably had a death wish, so to speak. He had tuberculosis, and he knew it. He died at a very early age. He probably had a death wish to go down and see action. He tried to join the Army, but his health kept him out, so he got his play in the war as a civilian.
The soldiers were in appearance an absolutely good-natured set of half-starved ragamuffins. The Cuban camp was an expeditious affair of sapling and palm bark tied with creepers. It could be burned to the ground in 10 minutes and reduplicated in 5.
Crane and Davis observed General Maximo Gomez and the rebel forces of Cuba Libre, which by the end of 1896 have grown from scattered insurgent bands into an army of 50,000 men. At last, General Gomez is making headway in casting off the shackles of 400 years of Spanish rule.
Las cadenas de Cuba fueron forradas por sus propias riquezas. Y eso precisamente es lo que propongo liquidar. Los jefes y los oficiales del ejército bajo de mi mando azotarán al enemigo a donde quieras que se encuentren.
One of the battle strategies of the Cuban rebels was what was known as the T incendiaria. It consisted of burning sugarcane plantations to leave the Spanish colonial regime without the main source of income of the cities and the Spanish landowners of the island.
I always imagined that houses were destroyed during war because they got in the way of cannonballs. But here they're destroyed for the purpose of making war horrible and hurrying up the end.
I think there's a lot more to the causation of the war than the newspaper battles. But surely the newspapers contributed to the information that people had about which to talk.
On January 19th, Richard Harding Davis is in Santa Clara, Cuba, and witnesses the dawn execution of a rebel by a Spanish firing squad.
He had a handsome, gentle face, that of the peasant type, shockingly young for such a sacrifice. The officer of the firing squad hastily whipped up his sword. The men leveled their rifles. The sword rose, dropped, and the men fired. The Cuban sank on his side without a struggle or sound. It did not move again. The blood from his breast sinking into the soil he had tried to free.
With public